Someone tried to kill the President of the United States at the White House Correspondents Dinner, and the response from the administration wasn't just about the shooter. It was about a ballroom. Well, I'm going to break down what actually happened here, how a guy with 2 guns crossed the country on Amtrak, got inside a hotel full of Secret Service, and why the political fallout from this is almost more alarming than the attack itself. It's Tuesday, April 28th. I'm Grant Hermes, and this is Make It Make Sense. On Saturday night, around 2,600 journalists, government officials, and their guests packed into the ballroom of the Washington D.C. Hilton Hotel for the White House Correspondents Association dinner. If you don't know what that is, it's nerd prom in D.C. Basically, all the major media companies get together, they throw pre-parties and after-parties where the nerds, journalists and politicians who are invited by those media outlets rub elbows. For decades now, the president has been an honored guest, and usually a comedian gives the keynote speech and then pokes fun at the president and other officials and big names in the room. The event itself is really supposed to be a celebration of the First Amendment, and the money raised by this dinner goes to support both the White House Correspondents Association, but also scholarships for journalism students and programs. It's a big night in D.C. and for journalism. It's also one that a lot of people, myself included, have mixed feelings about. I'll talk about that later. As people were beginning to eat, shots rang out, about 4 or 5 of them. Everybody ducked under their tables. Secret Service rushed in to evacuate the president, First Lady, the Vice President, the Speaker of the House, and members of the cabinet who were there. It was like the first 6 names in the line of presidential succession who were at this thing, which is going to be a topic of discussion moving forward about whether having that many of them in the same place like this is a good idea. The shots, according to the Department of Justice, were fired by 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen of Torrance, California. Video released by the president on social media shows Allen sprinting past Secret Service agents, trying to get down several floors to where the ballroom was. He didn't actually make it to the floor where the event was being held. I think that gets lost in the coverage of this right now. But according to the charges filed against him, which include attempted assassination of the president, he was carrying a shotgun and a handgun, both of which he apparently was able to carry onto not one, but 2 different Amtrak trains from Los Angeles to Chicago and then Chicago to D.C. He fired at a Secret Service agent. Agents then returned fire but missed. An agent was hit, but right now the FBI doesn't know whose bullet hit that agent. The important thing here, though, is that agent is okay. Allen tripped, hit the ground, and agents took him into custody. He also apparently left what's being called a manifesto, but it's really more like a missive, where he said he was planning to take up members of the administration, starting with Trump and then working his way down in order of importance. And as to why he wanted to carry out this attack, he wrote in part, "I am a citizen of the United States of America. What my representatives do reflects on me. And I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes." We'll come back to that a little later, but Allen was in court yesterday. It was uneventful, and he'll be back in court again on Thursday for his detention hearing. It's just part of the process. He seems to have been motivated by a lot of anti-Trump sentiment, and he certainly has left-leaning views, but was not registered with any official party. There have been a lot of questions and criticism of security at the dinner. A lot of reporters have said there was basically no one checking IDs. You could get in by just showing a screenshot of a ticket. There was nothing more than metal detectors you had to walk through. There wasn't a real sweep of the building until the day of, which allowed Allen to stay at the hotel the day before the dinner and already be inside security. And there are also concerns about how long it took Secret Service to get to Trump. They were a good distance away up on the stage, and they were actually closer to J.D. Vance than they were the president. And it took several minutes before they were able to get to members of the cabinet like Pete Hegseth, which, if the shooter had gotten into the room, might have been too long. White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles is expected to meet with high-level staff at the Secret Service and the Department of Homeland Security this week about what, if anything, needs to change here. Because, again, Allen didn't get to the floor where the president was, and they did arrest him. But there do seem to be gaps in how this very public event, littered with high-level government officials, was secured. Now, in the hour that followed the attack, it was unclear whether the dinner could continue. The president said on social media he wanted the show to go on, but obviously the Secret Service wasn't going to let that happen. So they canceled. The dinner is now expected to be rescheduled for sometime in the next month. And Trump held a press conference after this where he said things like this.
But in light of this evening's events, I ask that all Americans recommit with their hearts in resolving our difference peacefully. We have to resolve our differences. I will say, you had Republicans, Democrats, independents, conservatives, liberals, and progressives. Those words are interchangeable, perhaps, but maybe they're not. But yet everybody in that room, big crowd, record-setting crowd. There was a record-setting group of people, and there was a tremendous amount of love and coming together.
Now, he doesn't mean they came together as Americans. He means they came together over him. It's still about him here, and I'm going to get to the call for peace stuff in a minute because it doesn't actually last that long. But I am leaving something out, because before he said that, the first thing he said after the obligatory thank you to Secret Service was about the ballroom.
And I will say, it's not a particularly secure building. And I didn't want to say this, but this is why we have to have all of the attributes of what we're planning at the White House. It's actually a larger room, and it's much more secure. It's drone-proof, it's bulletproof glass. We need the ballroom. That's why Secret Service, that's why the military are demanding it.
So this is the new line that has come out of this. Almost immediately, MAGA personalities online started saying, this is why Trump needs his ballroom. This is how these people work. A lot of them get paid and are in group chats where they get flash notice talking points that are sent to them. It's how they coordinate so fast. But then the next day, we started hearing from U.S. senators who wanted to make building the ballroom a taxpayer-funded project. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul said he was going to introduce a bill today. Pennsylvania Democrat John Fetterman said he wants the ballroom now. And Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina said this.
And the ballroom. Many people, I think, originally saw it as a vanity project, that President Trump wanted to build this grand ballroom as a kind of a vanity project. I don't see it that way, and I don't think I ever did. A meeting space that is secured on the White House grounds that would allow people to do what they did at the Hilton Hotel is necessary. I'm convinced if there had been a presidential ballroom adjacent to the White House, the guy would have never gotten in.
Just a meeting space that comes with chandeliers and marble floors and gilded ceiling tiles. Sure. Anyway, then we get the Department of Justice, which the following day, the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, a Trump political appointee named Brett Shumate, sent a letter to the group suing to block the ballroom from being built right now, telling them to drop their suit because it's a matter of national security and presidential safety, writing, when the White House ballroom is complete, President Trump and his successors will no longer need to venture beyond the safety of the White House perimeter to attend large gatherings. Put simply, your lawsuit puts the lives of the president, his family, and his staff at grave risk. Now, that is a weird take because it implies that the ballroom will turn the president and any future presidents into agoraphobic shut-ins where people, whether it's the public or issue groups or foreign dignitaries, will have to come to the White House and approach the president like a king who can't leave his throne. It's just weird. And then today, it got even weirder. The acting Attorney General, or as I've been thinking of him, the auditioning Attorney General, Todd Blanche, filed maybe the most insane court document I've seen from the Department of Justice in my time as a journalist. At its core, it's a routine filing asking the judge in this ballroom case to dissolve his ruling blocking the building of the ballroom. But it reads like a draft of one of Trump's social media rants. There are random capitalizations, exclamation points, quotations where they're not needed. They imply some kind of Obama or Democratic-led conspiracy to put Trump at risk. They call Obama Barack Hussein Obama for no reason. And they say that group suing over the ballroom is both fake and real, but they all have Trump derangement syndrome, so their lawsuit isn't serious because of that fake condition. All the while, they continue to claim the ballroom is about national security, which, for what it's worth, that wasn't an argument the administration was making up until last week, when the judge ruled that they didn't convince him the ballroom portion of it was necessary for national security, but the bunker and apparently top-secret military operation below it is, which he is allowing to continue to be built. In fact, from the beginning, the administration never said anything about the ballroom project being about keeping the president safe. It was about having a better space to entertain at the White House. There's only a single mention of the word security in the entire announcement of the ballroom from last year, and the Secret Service, so the idea of presidential security, is only mentioned twice. All three of those things are only mentioned in passing. And when it comes to this specific incident with the White House Correspondents Dinner, it wouldn't have been held at the White House anyway if it had a ballroom. For starters, the White House ballroom will only be big enough for about 1,000 people when it gets done. The Correspondents' Dinner is routinely closer to 2,500 people. More importantly, the dinner is meant to celebrate the work of the press and the First Amendment. Part of that is forcing the president and elected leaders to come down from on high and attend this gala. If it's held at the White House, it doesn't do that. It means the White House social staff is in charge, so the president is in charge. That means they control the guest list, the food, maybe even the money. We still aren't really sure how a privately funded piece of the White House would really work yet. But it would be the opposite of what this night is all about. And now this is where I'm going to take a little detour here. The White House Correspondents' Dinner is gross. Journalists shouldn't have a night dedicated to hobnobbing with the people they're supposed to be holding accountable. That's not to say that journalists and politicians can't be cordial or friendly. They are, I am, and have been with many. But this is different. It's certainly different when it's Trump, and it's the people in this administration, too. The Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, holds briefings like every other day in which he berates the press. He actively kicked out the Pentagon press corps from their offices last year in the building, but he gets invited. The FBI director, Kash Patel, is suing one of the most prominent magazines in the country as of last week for $250 million, but gets invited. J.D. Vance, the vice president, has actively made up stories to attack the press, but gets invited. And then, of course, there's Trump, who has made his political career on the back of calling the media fake news, calling journalists traitors and the enemy of the people. He was going to use his speech at this dinner to attack journalists and journalism. He told the president of the Correspondents Association and CBS White House correspondent Weijia Zhang that his speech was his shtick, and told 60 Minutes on Sunday this.
I was looking forward to making a speech.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been a lot different had I gone up and had I stayed. It was very interesting because I said, I can't make that speech. I was going to do a pretty
Tell me.
rip-roaring I won't go into the total details, but no, I was going to hit people really hard.
So why that guy gets to be an honoree at an event to celebrate freedom of the press, I just don't get. And why a White House Correspondents Association would ever agree to hold this event at a White House ballroom run by that guy, I wouldn't understand either. Now, moving on here, in that same interview, Trump turned around and attacked Norah O'Donnell, the journalist who was asking him questions.
He appears to reference a motive in it. He writes this, quote, administration officials, they are targets. And he also wrote this, I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I was waiting for you to read that because I knew you would, because you're horrible people, horrible people. Yeah, he did write that. I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
Do you think he was referring to you?
Excuse me. I'm not a pedophile. You read that crap from some sick person. I got associated with all stuff that has nothing to do with me. I was totally exonerated. Your friend.
Okay, so the you think he's talking about you that she does is an amazing piece of journalistic technique there. Trump, one, always thinks things are about him, and two, yes, Alan is talking about him, but it's just how Trump is wired. but also it's O'Donnell making sure that that part of Trump's answer doesn't fly by in whatever he says next. And just to set the record straight here, when Trump says he didn't rape anyone, that's not true. He was found liable for the sexual assault of the writer E. Jean Carroll twice, and the judge in that case said it was rape. And there are also serious allegations of Trump assaulting underage girls in the Epstein files, which I've detailed on the show and won't be doing again. And nothing in the Epstein files has exonerated Donald Trump. If anything, it's done the opposite. But his attack on O'Donnell there does bring us to what is happening next, which are calls for toning down rhetoric about the president, specifically under the guise of his renewed fight over which side of our politics is more violent. In the days since the shooting, Republican lawmakers and conservative leaders have been accusing Democrats and people on the left and people in the press of having outlandishly violent rhetoric that's causing violence to be carried out against the president and then conservatives. One of the main things they pointed to is this comment from House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who's a Democrat from New York, from last week.
We are in an era of maximum warfare, everywhere, all the time. And we're going to keep the pressure on Republicans in every single state in the union.
So the president of the Heritage Foundation, the ultra-right-wing group that's behind Project 2025, said online, "It is time for the right to win. We are in an existential fight for the American Republic." Now, he knows that Jeffrey's quote is being taken out of context. He was asked about redistricting and gerrymandering and was actually turning a quote a Trump official gave to the New York Times last year back on itself that was also about gerrymandering. I need to say, too, that Jeffries did say yesterday he was going to be doubling down on his rhetoric criticizing the president, and that's also gotten people up in arms, but it's also how the First Amendment works. Now, among those people who are up in arms is Texas Senator Ted Cruz.
People listen to you. People act based on this rhetoric. It is harmful. It is causing lunatics to hear what they say and to act out, and they are endangering people's lives, and I don't see a single Democrat backing off from it.
If you follow me on social media, you probably saw that I did a short thing on this yesterday, but there are new numbers out since the last time we hopped on this merry-go-round about political violence, which was back in September after Charlie Kirk was killed. The Cato Institute put together these new numbers in February and found in the last 50 years, so since 1975, politically motivated attacks have been mostly carried out by people with right-wing ideologies, and their attacks have been far deadlier when you don't include Oklahoma City or 9/11. I also found it was really interesting that you also see a spike in politically motivated violence of all kinds at about the time that Trump burst onto the political scene in 2015 as a candidate, and the number of attacks coming from the right still outpaced the left since he became president the first time around. But you can even go back as far as 2006, 2007, when Trump was the loudest voice in the birther movement against Obama, which he still is doing now, by the way, by continuing to use Obama's middle name, Hussein, when he talks about him. Now, is all of that 20 years ago Trump's fault? No. But certainly, as he's been the leader of the Republican Party for the last 10 years, he has not done anything to tone down this rhetoric. If anything, he's thrown gas on the fire. That being said, there has been an increase of violence and violent rhetoric on the left in the last few years. And a study from the Network Contagion Research Institute at Rutgers from last year found that 38% of Americans thought there would be some justification for assassinating Trump. 38% is a lot. And nearly 60% of the people who said that said they were left of center, and about 20% said they were right of center. That's not good. It is worth saying that 61% of Americans still thought assassinations were not at all justified, but 4 in 10 people being unsure about that at all is bad. But those are only thoughts and feelings, and at worst, the study was pointing to online memes and posts, which are very different than carrying out attacks, which again, happen more from right-wing ideologues. But what this all means is that the effects are calling for censorship from members of the government, and that is dangerous. Just today, the FCC is going after ABC, Disney, and Jimmy Kimmel again, maybe made in poor taste, maybe not. Kimmel made these jokes before the shooting took place, And the Department of Justice, as of this afternoon, has indicted former FBI Director James Comey for a social media post from last year where he posted a picture on Instagram of rocks arranged on the beach that read 8647. 86 as in to get rid of, and 47 as in Trump is the 47th president. Those kinds of actions could have real consequences on what people say about the president, and we shouldn't have those worries. The whole point of free speech is to be able to criticize those in power without the government being able to punish us for that speech. Yes, there are things like speech that incites violence or defamation, but we have laws and Supreme Court rulings for when those things go too far. Trump, according to people who are experts in this, is rapidly pushing the country away from democracy and towards authoritarian rule, with him at the head of it all. The ability to speak freely is key in slowing that down and stopping it. And I know that sounds biased, and maybe it is. But if it's anything, it's a bias in favor of democracy than anything else, because we shouldn't stand for it and wouldn't if Donald Trump were a Democrat. The last thing here is all the stuff about the shooting at the dinner was a setup, that it was all staged. That is nonsense. First of all, we don't have any evidence of anything like that. Second, it makes sense that there would be security lapses. A lot of DHS funding was shifted to ICE and Border Patrol last year, leaving Secret Service budgets stretched thin as they had to do more with Trump in need of more security after 2 previous attempts on his life. DHS has also been shut down for the last 75 days. And while Secret Service agents have been getting paid over those last 75 days, that money runs out at the end of this week, and so people are starting to get a little freaked out about that. And finally, Trump was about to do one of his favorite things, which was insult the media to their faces, and they were going to have to just sit there and take it for like an hour. He wanted to go back on stage to do that, so there was just like no way he was going to set something up to stop himself from doing that. And I know that there are a lot of people pointing to a lot of things, like Caroline Leavitt making what seems like now an ominous comment about there being shots fired during Trump's speech before the speech happened, or that this happened when Trump's approval ratings have never been lower and he's bound to get a boost from this for a little bit, or that nobody at the press conference afterwards seemed all that concerned about what just happened. And I don't know what to tell you about that. People react to these things a little bit differently. But mostly, I just think that's not living in reality. But it might actually point to the reality we are living in. I said something similar to this last week about the war in Iran and the way that Trump was talking about it, but for the last 10 years, we've lived in a political world where one side of the conversation is dominated by a leader who lies nearly constantly, so much so that it's becoming impossible to tell when he is actually telling the truth. And at the same time, he's been so successful in undermining the people, especially in the media, who are trying to tell you the truth, that you can't believe what they're saying either, though often a lot of them are doing a great job of getting that across. So what ends up happening is we fill in the gaps with conspiracy, with lies that we tell ourselves to make unbelievable things, like a lone shooter being able to board a train with guns across the country, hide out in a hotel in our nation's capital, plot to kill the president, and get pretty close, are possible only if a mass conspiracy is involved, because we can't believe the people who are supposed to tell us the truth. I don't know how to fix that, other than doing what we're doing right now. By that I mean you and me. Working through this as best as I can, as honestly as I know how, and hopefully helping you fill in as many of those gaps as possible. But until we have any real proof otherwise, it's just not worth your time, nor is it helpful to anyone to say that this thing wasn't real. So that's where we are today. An assassination attempt, a Department of Justice filing that reads like a social media rant, a crackdown on comedians and former FBI directors, all in the span of 24 hours. And it's not slowing down. If this helped you make sense of any of this week, hit subscribe, hit the like button, drop a comment below on what you think it's missed in the coverage of this story, and share it with somebody who needs the full picture. I'm Grant Hermes. Thank you so much for listening today, and I'll see you on Thursday.